In the year 1810, the people of Millbrook County first whispered of the Hartwell Mansion, a grey stone fortress that rose above Beacon Hill like a brooding sentinel. Its walls, quarried from the coldest rock in the valley, seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. By day, the mansion loomed, silent and austere, watching the farming town below. By night, its windows glimmered faintly with firelight, and those who passed along the dirt road swore they could hear faint moans carried on the wind. It was in this year that Jeremiah Hartwell, son of an iron magnate and heir to mines, furnaces, and vast shipping lines, brought home his first bride. Eleanor Price was her name, a young woman of 19, plucked from the vibrant social circles of Philadelphia. She was clever, lively, and possessed of a quick wit that charmed every drawing room she entered. Those who knew her said she glowed with health, that her laughter lifted hearts. The union seemed enviable, a merging of wealth and youth, and yet within months of her arrival the whispers began. At first the changes were subtle. Eleanor, once animated, grew withdrawn. She wrote fewer letters, and those she did send carried a faint tremor in the hand, as though each word had been pressed through unease. One such letter, dated November of that year, reached her mother. Dearest mother, the house is magnificent, yet it chills me. The nights are unkind. My rest is broken by sounds I cannot name. At times I believe the walls themselves breathe, for I hear a sighing as I lie awake. Jeremiah dismisses my fears, saying it is only the pipes or the settling of stone. Still, I feel an unease that clings like a shadow. The letter alarmed her family, but not enough to intervene. Newlywed nerves, they reasoned, or the imagination of a young bride unaccustomed to rural quiet. But in Millbrook, servants whispered that Eleanor wandered the halls at night, candle in hand, pressing her ear to the walls as if listening. Once, a chambermaid claimed to see her crouched in the corner of the master bedroom, rocking back and forth, muttering of faint voices that called her name. Jeremiah, when confronted, spoke with cold dismissal. My wife is fragile. She suffers from fancies. It will pass. The winter deepened. Snow piled high against the stone steps, and the house grew colder still. By spring, Eleanor's health had declined so sharply that she no longer left her bed. A physician, summoned from Philadelphia, wrote in his report, Mrs. Hartwell suffers from a delicate nervous affliction, bordering on hysteria. Her countenance is pale, her speech often confused. I recommend strict confinement, avoidance of undue stimulation, and the administration of laudanum. The laudanum dulled her, but it did not soothe. She faded like a candle guttering in its dish. By 1813, scarcely 3 years after her marriage, Eleanor was dead. The newspapers printed it politely, a wasting of the mind. The town mourned politely, but not deeply. After all, death came often in those days, and illness was the common thief of youth. Yet in hushed corners of taverns, some muttered that there was something uncanny in her decline. They noted how Jeremiah had seemed almost untouched by grief, resuming his business dealings within days of her burial. One housemaid later testified, "The master never smiled, never wept. When Mistress Eleanor was carried to her coffin, he stood beside it as if he were measuring lumber. His eyes did not follow her. They looked past her to some place we could not see." Rumors clung to the mansion after Eleanor's death. Some said the house was cursed. Others claimed Jeremiah himself carried a shadow, a chill that spread to any who entered his sphere. Still, his fortune, his influence, and his iron control silenced most tongues. Then, scarcely a year later, a new bride was seen riding up the long gravel drive to the mansion on Beacon Hill. She was Margaret Holloway, a musician of fine talent, with dark hair that gleamed like polished wood and a voice that could hush a room. Jeremiah married her with little delay, and the house was once again adorned with laughter, song, and youth. The town watched. Would the curse return, or had Eleanor's fate been misfortune alone? The answer came swiftly. Margaret's decline was brutal and public. Neighbors spoke of screams in the night, shrill and desperate. One farmer's wife, passing by in the small hours, swore she saw Margaret fleeing across the lawn in her nightdress, her hair unbound, her face wild with terror. She cried that something moved within the walls, that the house itself pressed upon her with a suffocating breath. They dragged her back inside before dawn, and after that she was not seen again. Within the year, Margaret was dead, and the whispers grew into a roar. Part 2. Annabel and Lydia. The town no longer called it coincidence. They whispered openly of the curse, though never within earshot of Jeremiah himself. Yet in 1818 the carriages came once more, bearing a new bride to Beacon Hill. Her name was Annabel Morris. Spirited, outspoken, and fiercely intelligent, she had heard the rumors. She dismissed them as tales told by the ignorant, insisting that women were not frail creatures doomed by curses, but strong beings undone by society's narrow view of them. Her letters before her wedding brimmed with defiance. "I will not fall prey to whispers of madness. If the former wives grew ill, it was weakness, not witchcraft. I am not afraid of shadows." Her confidence at first seemed justified. Annabel walked with poise through the echoing corridors, her chin lifted, her gaze steady. She laughed at the gossip and filled the drawing room with guests, determined to prove the house a place of life, not death. But her diary, preserved by her family after her death, tells another story. In June of 1819, she wrote, "My head aches with a strange pressure at night. The air in the chamber feels heavy, thick as though it resists my breath. I wake often and see shadows moving across the walls, though the windows are barred and locked. I turn to Jeremiah for comfort, yet he looks at me strangely, as if he studies my unraveling." By the year's end, her diary pages were stained with ink blotted in a tremulous hand. She wrote of voices drifting through the vents, of whispers that spoke her name in tones neither male nor female. She wrote of Jeremiah standing at her bedside in the dark, watching, not speaking, his eyes reflecting the faint glow of the dying fire. In early 1820, her writings devolved into near incoherent scratches of words repeated endlessly. Poisons, vapors, the house breathes. She died before the summer, leaving the town of Millbrook to wonder how another vibrant young bride could be claimed so swiftly. The servants grew restless. They whispered of a curse that clung not only to the bedroom, but to Jeremiah himself. A shadow that devoured every woman who dared call herself his wife. Yet they remained bound by wages and fear. When the bells tolled for Annabel, some swore the mansion itself gave a long, hollow sigh, as though the stone walls exhaled in grim satisfaction. In 1823, a fourth bride arrived. Lydia Stone, a woman of devout faith, known in her parish for her piety and gentle kindness. Where others whispered of curses and shadows, Lydia lifted her chin and declared, "I fear no evil. The Lord is my fortress, and his word shall guard me." Her arrival brought a brief hush to the rumors. Some believed her steadfast faith would repel whatever darkness lurked in the mansion. For a time, Lydia's presence seemed to steady the house. She gathered the servants in prayer, filled the library with psalms, but faith alone cannot bar poisoned air. By winter, Lydia's hands trembled as she turned the pages of her Bible. Her voice, once clear, faltered mid-verse. She spoke of the words shifting before her eyes, the holy text twisting into blasphemous shapes. The servants testified later that she locked herself in the library for hours, tearing at the pages, weeping, and begging that the Lord's word not be corrupted by the breath that seeps from the walls. Her pleas fell silent by spring. Lydia Stone, once a pillar of devotion, lay cold before her 25th birthday. Jeremiah dressed in black, his lips pressed in a line, and received the mourners with a solemnity that felt more rehearsed than real. The whispers in town no longer questioned the curse. They named it the Curse of the Hartwell Brides. Part 3. Catherine and the Revelation. 6 years passed before Jeremiah married again. 6 years in which the mansion stood quiet, its windows dark, its halls emptied of laughter. Servants came and went, though many left in fear, whispering of strange draughts that carried faint voices and the constant odor of coal smoke that lingered even in summer. Then, in 1829, the final bride arrived. Catherine Wells was only 18, bright-eyed and tender, with a family that watched her carefully. They had heard the stories, and though Jeremiah's fortune was great, they made frequent visits to the mansion, unwilling to surrender their daughter wholly to Beacon Hill. Catherine's letters to her father, at first cheerful, began to darken within the year. She wrote of headaches that pulsed behind her eyes, of a dizziness that left her unable to stand, of dreams in which shadowed figures crowded her bed, pressing their hands over her mouth until she woke, gasping for air. Her father grew alarmed. By 1834, his suspicions hardened into certainty. He wrote to Jeremiah, "Sir, my daughter's decline mirrors that of your former wives. I will not stand idle while her health wastes. If you deny me further entry, I will take this matter before the county court." Jeremiah refused, barring the gates, but the Wells family did not yield. They petitioned Millbrook County, forcing the hand of the law. For the first time, officials stepped across the threshold of the Hartwell mansion, determined to unearth the truth. What they found behind those carved oak walls stunned even the most hardened men. Behind the paneling of the master bedroom ran a network of narrow vents, concealed with such cunning craftsmanship that no casual eye could detect them. These channels led directly to the furnace room below, where Jeremiah spent long hours experimenting. The investigators discovered jars of powders, strange minerals, and substances whose fumes, when burned, produced invisible vapors. A physician who entered the chamber recorded his findings. The air within was faint but foul. A candle burned weakly, its flame bowing low. I myself suffered dizziness after but an hour. Prolonged exposure, I have no doubt, would produce delirium, hallucination, and ultimately a wasting of both body and mind. I believe these women were slowly poisoned, not by accident, but by design. The servants, when questioned, confessed their unease. They spoke of Jeremiah's mutterings in his study, his obsession with the pliability of the human mind, his cold laughter when he declared, "The mind is clay, the body, the hand that shapes it." The curse was unmasked at last. There were no spirits in the walls, no divine judgment. The terror was man-made, a grotesque experiment conducted by the master of the house himself. The story spread with lightning speed. Jeremiah Hartwell was arrested, though his fortune allowed him delay after delay in the courts. Whispers spread that he bribed officials, that he held debts over men too powerful to confront him. The county seethed, but justice was slow, almost stillborn. Then, in 1837, before his trial reached its end, Jeremiah was found dead in his study. Officially, the verdict was apoplexia, sudden seizure. Yet rumors of poison, of suicide, of vengeance by some unseen hand rippled through Millbrook like wildfire. Epilogue: the Hartwell mansion was abandoned. By the 1850s, its roof had fallen in, and its walls gaped like the jaws of a ruined beast. Children dared one another to climb Beacon Hill, but none lingered after dusk. They swore the silence there was deeper than anywhere else, as if the earth itself recoiled from the memory of what had been done within those walls. Even now, the story lingers. Not as a tale of ghosts, but of something far more terrible. The cruelty of a man shielded by wealth, the blindness of a society quick to label women hysterical, and the slow unraveling of 5 lives in a house that seemed cursed in. The curse was given a name. The land where the mansion stood remains empty. Those who walk there at night say they sometimes hear weeping, soft and mournful, drifting through the trees. Some claim the voices call their names as if the 5 wives still linger, desperate to be remembered not as madwomen, but as victims. Thus the Hartwell legacy endures, not in stone or lineage, but in shadow and silence, a grim reminder that the most profound horrors are not born of the supernatural, but of the human heart.